We're going to move on to our next presentation, which is the ILEWG EUROMOONMARS field campaigns, lessons for Artemis crew and science support collaboration, which is from Foing et al.
Hello. So it's very impressive to follow our European Artemis commander, Roxana, that I just talked before, but to say she has also worked as a flight director. And that's a type of experiment that we have conducted recently. But we started this EUROMOONMARS field campaign more than 11 years ago, with a collaboration between ILEWG, EUROMOONMARS, and academia, as well as space agencies. We worked in some of the first missions a lot with NASA Ames, with Carol Stoker and Chris McKay and colleagues. We have then conducted every year a series of campaigns, but as well our activities look at analyzing data for the Moon and Mars, developing instruments, developing landers, developing simulation, and even bases where we can train the future Artemis astronaut, but also the support crew. So I've put some of the names of those that have been collaborating with us. The next slide, please. So we start by looking where are we going to land. And for this, we use some of the maps, like the one we obtained with a smart one on the South Polar regions, and where you have very interesting area of interest, Amundsen crater, but also the permanently shadowed region with ice deposit. And the next slide shows also what we discovered and confirmed, the smart one peak of light, which we could observe during the whole season, and we could establish that 80% of the winter we have light there. So there is a race to go there, and it will be certainly one of the base of future Artemis mission, and we'll have a village there. So how do we prepare to go there? So next slide shows we go there. The one in between. Oh, that was fast. Yeah. So after we did the smart one, we have also established a collaboration with other agencies, industries, stakeholders to provide a roadmap for the exploration of the moon with its orbital precursors, then building a robotic village, so the idea we proposed like 20 years ago, and then going into the moon village with humans and robots working in sustainable ways using resources. So we are looking at this scheme towards a permanent presence on our 8 continents, the moon. So in order to prepare for it, we are looking first at the next slide, which is how we can merge the various data from the previous orbital fleet, the smart one, then we had Kaguya, we had the Chang'e 1 and 2 mission, we had Chandrayaan 1, then we had LRO, Grail, and LADI, and that provide great resources for future planning of our activities on the surface of the moon. Next slide shows also how we are preparing on the ground some simulations. So this is almost like the moon, that the Etna volcano, when it was not in eruption, where we organized a series campaign. And we had one plan in June this year. We had one also in 2017, where we had 2 smart autonomous robots, partly teleoperated and partly completely autonomous, that meet with the lander and deploy some instruments like seismometers, sample analysis, very low frequency radio astronomy from the moon, and telerobotics. So that's one aspect how we prepare also the ground for towards Artemis. The next slide shows what happens when we have landed there. So this is our Google Lunar Express lander that is being refurbished by an Artemis astronaut in order to check some of the instruments that have been there on this Scout lander. So the next phase is how we are going to proceed with humans. So that's the next slide showing that we have built, in fact, a base. This is, oh, that's fast. This is our base. This is our Artemis base. You can recognize it. This is on half way toward the summit of Mauna Loa. That's the International Moon Base Alliance, where you have a self-sustained energy. And we have been organizing a series of campaigns for 2 weeks, short duration mission, more representative of the Artemis mission. So next slide shows how we run this campaign. So we We have days outside, geologists looking at data. You have here fixing some antenna. We have put also a ground control station. And I would like then now to move towards what we are going, how we are distributing the different roles between the crew and the mission control center and also the remote support. So you can go to the next slide, which is just illustrating that we prepare for EVA. We conduct also a number of inside investigation, analyzing sample, but also life science experiment. The next slide shows some of the activities in the field. Here, these are two master geology students. They did some of their work looking at how basalt are affected by hydration, or also some microbial population in lava tubes. Next slide shows you how we divide. We have some support from mission control. So we have a flight director, but you have also some engineers and some science support, the front science room, as we could call it. Next slide shows you, in fact, how we, okay, this is the front room, so the engineers helping to fix some of the system in the base. And the next slide shows you how we derive the tactical planning for the target we are going to visit. In particular, we have identified a number of candidate lava tubes and the skylight to this lava tube. And so the remote science team had proposed some of these targets to go. So in the roles that we have 6 crew. And so we have a commander, executive officer, habitat engineer, we have a geologist, a life scientist, and then often we have a journalist or tourist that is documenting the activity. Next slide shows you some example of traverse going into an entrance to lava tube. So this was a small entrance. Later they discovered the bigger skylights, and we have explored it. That's what we show in the next slide. So some research objectives that were followed, and where you have a significant remote support to identify the size, but also then investigators that will be involved in the analysis of the samples that are taken from the lava tube. And so this has been conducted after the campaign. So finally, the next slide shows you, okay, some of these lava tubes. And in fact, the idea is later to emplace a small subsurface laboratory in this lava tube where you could conduct some of these follow-on activities. Last slide, I believe. Oh no, that's okay. We have mentioned that this is just some series of precursor activities, but after we have to go in a more complex scenarios to look at all those challenges for this ARTEMIS and Moon Village implementation. So people are doing rocket and landing, but also in the area of operation, science, communications, mobility, also exploiting resources, and how you do that in partnership between human and robot. But also the new views is that we have to involve many non-governmental users, so we have also to associate them to some of the goals of exploration, science, and technology. So next slide shows, in summary, so a iconic view of what we could have in a kind of post-ARTEMIS phase, where we start to deploy large structures where we could have a sustainable human presence. And as a summary, how do we prepare for ARTEMIS and Moon Village on Earth? We do it with analyzing data, but also with testing some rovers that will be precursor instruments. And also we have this facility for human activities in laboratories and testing extravehicular activities. And so we are trying to learn also from those how to optimize the remote science support that can be conducted to get science benefit, but also to ensure the other objectives for the Moon Village, which is even beyond science, that can include technology, peaceful cooperation, economics, and inspiration, and a renaissance beyond the cradle of the Earth. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. It's great to see, and just want to go climb into a lava too myself.